the Tathagata's true meaning.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and for sitting together. Two really, really nice, very deep periods this morning.
Make sure you project.
Two very nice, very deep periods of sitting this morning. I thank you all, and 35 minutes is it's a good amount, and I always appreciate being able to be here on Sunday and listen to the birds and the occasional dog dragging his leash by. I don't know if you heard that earlier. At least I think that's what that was. And then, didn't quite catch the name, but I think the owner calling out for the dog that ran by our Zendo here this morning. I guess they found him. At least I hope they did. But lovely to hear the birds, as always, and I used to have a little bit of resentment for the vehicles and the motorcycles going by, and then it reminded me of the helicopters down at ZCLA and the ice cream truck and the other noises, and reminded me that it just means that I'm here. I get to be here in this lovely place on a nice Sunday morning with you all. So before I get started, I'd like to offer a few acknowledgments. So first, I want to express my gratitude to White Heron Sangha for sharing their lovely, lovely space with us. This is pretty fantastic. So it's great that we have this available to us and get to do some of our larger important ceremonies here, our Jukai ceremonies, or Hosen, and last weekend our first big deal Buddha's birthday party, complete with cookies and tea. So that was wonderful, and I really enjoyed that and look forward to seeing how that might develop in the future. It'd be great to have an even bigger bash for the Buddha next year. Second, I'd like to pay my respects to the Northern Chumash, whose ancestral land this is, so please join me in bow of respect. And also like to pay my respects to the Japanese and Chinese immigrants who came to California and to the rest of the United States and brought the Dharma to North America and maintained it long before the dominant culture took any notice or was interested. And they've made our practice possible. And so also please join me in a bow of respect to them and to their descendants who practice just down the road from us. Lastly, I want to offer a bow of appreciation to all the Buddhas and ancestors in our Zen lineage. The opportunity to study and practice the Buddha way is a rare and precious thing that comes down to us across 15 centuries. 25 centuries, I think it is. Is that right? Mm-hmm. 25 centuries and across continents and oceans down to us today. And I feel very fortunate to be, in some small part, an inheritor of that. And being here and being able to practice the Buddha Dharma as inheritors of that cultural and spiritual lineage, if we think about it, we are, hopefully, the ancestors to those who will practice in the future. I don't know if it'll be 25 centuries, but it may just be next year or next decade or the next century. But our practice together makes it possible for those who come after us to also practice. So, welcome, Buddhas and ancestors. I see why.
Kanjō, I'm going to do another little check here.
Okay, I see why the the tea is an integral part of the talk.
On Zoom, can you hear okay?
And who do we have on Zoom this morning? I know Koshin is there. I think I saw John.
Charles,
Charles. Welcome, Charles.
thank you.
So, a couple of weeks ago, I was giving some beginning Zazen instruction to two new visitors to our Thursday night program. Welcome, Amber. And I was struck, as I have been in the past, by how relatively little there is to Zazen instruction. And as we all probably realize, that's a little bit deceptive, but at least from the outside appearance, there's not much to it. And in half an hour, you can give pretty thorough instructions to a beginner, and even throw in some ceremonial information about practices and related to bowing and other things in the Zendo. But the instructions are pretty straightforward. Find a comfortable, stable sitting posture with 3 points of contact, the floor or with the chair and the floor, and arrange your spine and your shoulders, your eyes, your hands in a particular way, and breathe. Count the breath, follow the breath, and notice what your mind does. And relate to your mind and your thoughts in such a way that you're not attaching to things. If you notice that you are, let that go, but also so that you're not pushing things away. And I think most of us are probably familiar with Dogen Zenji's Fukan Zazengi, which we have studied in our group. If you're not, I'll take a little side trip here and just say that, first of all, who is Dogen Zenji? Dogen Zenji is, or was, the Zen master who brought Soto Zen from China to Japan about 800 years ago. And when he returned from China, one of the first things he did, and he was only about, I think, 27 years old when he did this, is he wrote a short essay recommending Zazen as the key to Zen practice, and giving basic instructions, which, if you have seen them, you'll know that they're still relevant today. Very, very much the same kind of instruction that you give, or we give, to anyone who comes to visit our group who hasn't sat before. And in this essay titled Fukan Zazengi, or Universal Recommendations for Zazen, Dogen has this to say in part about Zazen. Once you've adjusted your posture, take a deep breath, inhale and exhale, rock your body right and left, and settle into a steady, immovable sitting position. Sounds familiar. Think not thinking. How do you think of not thinking? Non-thinking. This in itself is the essential art of Zazen. The Zazen I speak of is not learning meditation. It is simply the Dharma gate of repose and bliss, the practice realization of totally culminated enlightenment. It is the manifestation of ultimate reality. So often when this segment of Fukan Zazengi is presented, what we look at or focus on is the perplexing idea or concept or instruction to think of non-thinking or not thinking. But I'd like to direct our attention to the Dharma gate of repose and bliss. Our dear friend and current head trainee, Koshin, who's on Zoom with us this morning. Good to see you. Shared a few weeks ago that he'd been practicing with this very phrase, the Dharma gate of repose and bliss. And I hope I'm not misremembering or misrepresenting Koshin, but I seem to recall that we both kind of chuckled at that as the description of what the experience of Zazen is like. But as a result of that conversation, somewhat like someone telling you the song that's been stuck in their head for a couple of days, and then it sticking in your head for a few days after that, I've now also been practicing with the Dharma gate of repose and bliss. So thank you for that, Koshi. So let's take a look at that phrase and let's unpack it just a little bit and see what we think. So Zazen is the Dharma gate of repose and bliss. What do we mean by Dharma gate? What is a Dharma gate? So a Dharma gate is a teaching or practice that can lead a person to a deeper understanding of the Dharma, of the nature of reality, and help them to progress along the path. So in our practice, a Dharma gate can be many things. Anything that helps us understand or embody the teachings of the Buddha. It can be meditation, it can be studying texts or scriptures, sutras. It can be acts of compassion or generosity, or work with others or in the community or with your family. But Dogen is telling us in Fukan Zazengi that Zazen is not only a Dharma gate, but it is the Dharma gate. The Dharma gate of repose and bliss. And if we're familiar with the enlightenment story of the Buddha, after the Buddha realized that all of the austerities he'd been practicing for many years weren't getting him anywhere, the one practice that he did return to was sitting. Sat himself down under the Bodhi tree and vowed to sit and sit until things became clear. So Dogen tells us that Zazen is the Dharma gate, or as Maizumi Roshi put it, while there are many Dharma gates, Zazen is the front gate, which for me conjures up the image of a garden. And maybe Maizumi Roshi working in the garden. There's a story about him working in the garden. Somebody came up the driveway and said that they were interested in learning about some Zen, and they wondered if they could go talk to the teacher somewhere. And Maizumi Roshi, standing there in his gardening clothes, said, "Oh, sure, go that way. They'll help you." So, Dharma gate. That's what we mean by a Dharma gate. So what about this word repose? Well, by repose, we mean a state of rest. But repose can also mean to be situated in a particular place or in a particular way. Now, we could say, actually, rest and to be situated in a particular place. I think in this context of this phrase that we're looking at, I think both could apply. But to repose then means to rest, and in so doing, to cease to engage in strenuous or stressful activity. We could say that repose means a state of having put down our burdens and having bodily and physically come to rest. Other translations of the Fukan Zazengi, instead of using the word repose, use the word peace. So the Dharma gate of peace. For me, I think peace has many other larger and sometimes complicated connotations. So I actually like repose because it isn't sort of used up in a way with other, or filled up with other meanings. And then we have bliss. The Dharma gate of repose and bliss, meaning, as you might guess, a state of perfect happiness and contentment. Other translations, in place of bliss, choose the word joy. That may be a good translation as well. But again, in this case, I think I prefer bliss. At least for me, joy has the sort of energetic connotation of something like jumping for joy. And it feels a little too energetic, at least for me, when we're talking about Zazen. Maybe not for you. So then, fully unpacked, we can say that Zazen is the practice of putting down our stressful mental and physical activities and coming to rest in a particular place, in a particular way, and experiencing perfect happiness and contentment, which ultimately leads to a deeper understanding of the nature of reality and the self. Well, I think it's safe to say that for many people, including many sincere and diligent practitioners, this description doesn't always match our experience. If you're a beginner just starting out, maybe you can tell yourself, well, I'm new. I'll get it. I'll get there. Take some practice. But if you have a regular Zazen practice, and if you sit consistently, regularly, and sincerely, you may still notice that your experience doesn't match Dogen's description. So, as Sensei Shogun likes to say, and I'll give the cleaned up version, if you sit long enough, all your stuff comes up. Over and over and over again. So, what's going on here? Why is there such a difference? Why is there a disparity? It's easy to think or suspect that when this happens, that perhaps something's gone wrong. Maybe I'm not doing this right. For years, I told people I love Zen, but I'm a terrible meditator. I'm really bad at it. My counting practice to begin with was years of counting 1, and then mental vacation 1. So, and it took me a long time to realize maybe that just counting 1 was okay, but that's a different story. So, we know that we're supposed to sit without any gaining idea, as made popular by Suzuki Roshi. No gaining idea, without any expectation of getting anything out of Zazen, right? Even though it took some idea of something being necessary, missing, needed for us to come and start practicing in the first place. We know that we should sit without any expectation. So we sit anyway, despite the noise and distractions that arise again and again in our mind. But it's easy to get discouraged, right? So where is this repose and bliss that Dogen talks about? So, in the quote that I read earlier, Dogen says that Zazen is the Dharma gate of repose and bliss, and then he goes on to say that it is the practice realization of totally culminated enlightenment. It is the manifestation of ultimate reality. And you can take that two ways. One way, it actually may sound like it's just making it worse. Because my experience is not totally culminated enlightenment. It's my brain thinking about the things I got to do on Sunday afternoon so I can go to work. Well, that's okay. In another one of Dogen's works, the Shobogenzo, he elaborates on this particular concept of practice realization, saying in his very poetic way that he has, Dogen says, "On the great road of Buddha ancestors, there is always unsurpassable practice, continuous and sustained. It forms the circle of the way and is never cut off. Between aspiration, practice, enlightenment, and nirvana, there's not a moment's gap. Continuous practice is the circle of the way." So he's saying between aspiration the thing that brought us to the cushion in the first place. Practice, actually sitting. And enlightenment and nirvana, perhaps the thing we thought we were going to get. There is not a moment's gap, meaning no difference, no separation. Continuous practice is the circle of the way. So, what does this mean? Well, fundamentally, the fruit of what we do is precisely the thing we're doing. In other words, we don't practice to attain enlightenment. Practice because practice is enlightenment. Or as Dogen would say, we don't train to become a Buddha. We train or practice as a Buddha. Thus, when we practice Zazen, we simply show up. We become present without trying to achieve any particular state or state of mind, gain any particular insights or realizations. We simply cultivate our awareness. When we notice we've lost our cultivation of awareness, we bring it back and maintain our openness to whatever arises. So it doesn't matter what our idea of Zazen may be, what it is, what we think it should be like. A monk once asked Master Joshu, "What is Zazen?" Joshu replied, "It's not Zazen." Joshu. The monk was puzzled. "Why is it not Zazen?" Joshu said, "Because it's alive. It's alive." So the point is not our idea of Zazen or how it's supposed to be. It's alive. Every time we sit down, it's our life, our actual experience of Zazen here and now, whatever arises. And is it peace and joy and repose and bliss? Maybe. Maybe not. But it doesn't mean it's a waste of time or it's not worth doing or that nothing's happening. Everything is happening. And likewise, our experience on the cushion in any particular period of Zazen is not the point. Blissful or not, the real point is to return again and again, Dogen's continuous practice, the circle of the way. And each time to return without expectation or ideas about what we're going to get out of it, and just sit as a Buddha, as an expression of our true nature. We may, of course, through consistent practice, see practical benefits of our sitting, increased mindfulness, increased ability to handle our emotions and manage our stress, ability to concentrate, focus for longer periods of time. Those things are nice. Those are good things. And they're not to be dismissed. But Zazen practice is more than just a kind of self-improvement. Maizumi Roshi said, to practice the Buddha way, to practice Zazen, is to practice oneself. This seemingly repetitive process of Zazen is nothing but your life. Absolute reality manifesting as your life. Returning to just this, again and again. We begin to see our true nature, our Buddha nature, which was always there from the beginning. Not something that we work to grow, or create, or build, but something that is gradually uncovered and clarified over time. So I'll close with Master Dogen's own encouraging words. You have gained the pivotal opportunity of human form. Do not use your time in vain. You are maintaining the essential working of the Buddha way. Who would take wasteful delight in the spark from the flintstone? Besides, form and substance are like the dew on the grass. Destiny is like the dart of lightning, emptied in an instant, vanished in a flash. Please, honored followers of Zen, long accustomed to groping for the elephant, do not be suspicious of the true dragon. Devote your energies to a way that directly indicates the absolute. Revere the person of complete attainment who is beyond all human agency. Gain accord with the enlightenment of the Buddhas. Succeed to the legitimate lineage of the ancestors' samadhi. Constantly perform in such a manner, and you are assured of being a person such as they. Your treasure store will open of itself, and you will use it at will. Thank you. Do you have any time for discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Questions and comments?
First of all, thank you very much. I really appreciate your clarity of thought. Also appreciate that you showed appreciation for so many things at the beginning. Just the recognition of those who have come before us and being here and recognizing what a gift it is to be here, the Sangha, and for us to be together. I also want to acknowledge that, and I wish I could articulate it, it's fascinating to me how everybody expresses their understanding of the Dharma. And it sounds silly, but it's so much you, that you have this sense of clarity and taking a topic and breaking it down so that it's approachable, that something that seems difficult and confusing maybe, or not, of making it open up so it's approachable. So it's something that it's that we can gain a deeper understanding of. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikai. Checking out the Zoom screen, just in case. Any other questions or comments from anyone here in person or on Zoom?
I have a comment. Oh, Koshin?
Koshin, go ahead, and then John.
Yeah.
Actually, why don't you go ahead, John? You had your hand up, and I'll follow you.
Sounds good. Or my hand. I just wanted to I wanted to say thank you first off for that Dharma talk. That was very enlightening. It was the thing I wanted to comment was about how it's the Dharma gate of joy and bliss, but also like it brings Zazen brings up all the stuff that you get, and I feel like when I do Zazen, at least, there's that feeling of equanimity that comes in, and I think that's the key, is like the equanimity, and that's the bliss, and that's the joy and bliss, because you get all this stuff that comes up and you realize that this is life, and I'm living and I have all these problems, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm joyous because I can deal with these problems, and the Zazen gives you that ability, the Zazen helps you with dealing with those problems, uh, and it grounds you in life, and practice is life and enlightenment and all that, and it brings about that joy and bliss. So I understand where Dogen's coming from with the Dharma gate of joy and bliss, and yeah, thank you so much for helping me to come to that.
You're welcome. Suzuki Roshi, in a talk, said that we should be grateful for our problems, as you kind of indicated, John, because if it weren't for our problems, we'd just be sitting here for no reason.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I'm Koshin. Thanks so much for your talk, Kanjō. Yeah, I really appreciate your clarity and in beginning with the appreciation for the wider context of our practice. And, that resonated a lot with me. And then, yeah, clearly the topic resonated with me too, because it's, we were in the year-end session, and, that how that is, right? Phrases, slogans come up and they just stick and rattle around. And that's always been my practice. And I think um, I think John pretty much nailed it for me. When you were talking, it started to kind of clarify, which is usually how it is, right? In my experience of a Dharma talk, sometimes it's confusing and ideas are confusing, but it's the bliss thing always kind of threw me for the repose I could get just in situ, in the Zendo, at Crow's End especially. It's just my body recognizes that. And but the bliss was always been a challenge for me because it's not a word that I'm known to use. This is not part of my vernacular as in my life. But I think kind of like equanimity, another kind of fancy word that's a little slippery for me sometimes, but it reminds me back at when we were at Yokaji, which also keeps coming back to me for the last 5 years or whenever it was, in Jokai talking about it's just don't have preferences. Delete all your preferences, which I've had a really hard time practicing with that. Sitting, in repose, dealing with pain is hard for anybody. Well, it can be, and it wasn't my experience. But it's just at some point, and you nailed it when you said your counting practice. I was always challenged with counting numbers too. One, one, and then finally it's like one, it's okay, and it's just like it's okay. That like my experience of bliss after listening to your talk is basically just no more shoulds. It's like I'm just here, a moment on the cushion in this experience right here without shoulds. And that does it. And it's another thing that's been coming up for me is that opening. Like so opening the hand of thought, opening the heart, opening the Dharma gate. And what's it opening to is my life. And just my experience. And if I can be with my body, my nervous system on the cushion with the pain, with the suffering of the world, that's it. I mean, that's bliss. So when I used to think of bliss, it was like this bubbly kind of airy sort of thing. And maybe it's just the absence of the overwhelming burden on my shoulders of not doing it right, or they not doing it right, or the world being, whatever it is. But if I could escape those bound, that, I don't know, binds that tie me is a phrase that comes up for me. It's like I can escape those for a minute. It is kind of an open feeling. So I really appreciate your talk very much. And thank you. And thanks to the whole Sangha. I so appreciate having a group to practice with. It's really appreciated.
Thank you. And yeah, and just to reflect on one thing that you said there, you talked about not really identifying with the bliss part of the Dharma gate of repose and bliss. And one additional thought that I would put out there is just because Dogen says that Zazen is the Dharma gate of repose and bliss, it doesn't mean that he's saying that your experience of Zazen is going to be bliss. But since Zazen is your life, and your life is Zazen, and continuous practice is your life, maybe your equanimity is not experienced on the cushion, at least not this time or today, but maybe later this afternoon or tomorrow as part of your continuous practice of sitting. So, for what it's worth. Thank you. All right, we're at 11:25. So, any other comments or questions, observations? Okay.
Okay, I can't help it.
Okay.
Only because this has never occurred to me, and I think it's related to your talk, and maybe for a lot of people it's like, well, no, duh. But just realize that the sabutan is the lotus. We sit on the lotus, and it's like everything beneath that is like the Buddha sitting on the lotus, and the lotus is in the swamp, or whatever you want to call it, the wetlands. You know, it's not a lovely place necessarily that the lotus blooms. And so when all these things come up, of course they do, because that's where you're sitting. You're sitting on all the stuff of life. You're sitting on this, yet to me is a wonderful image, because you're sitting on the difficulties of life, the joys and sorrows of life, and you're not sitting necessarily directly on that, you're sitting on a lotus. And the lotus you might see as that repose and bliss.
Thank you.
It's another teaching moment. So with the formal exit, the Anja picks up the tea first. This is while we're doing the vows. We're going to do that. And you have your cards already for our, yeah. So you can follow along. And that's followed by...
So we started at the second, like at the second time through, or right away?
Right away.
Okay.
Yeah. And what you're supposed to do is your 3 vows first,
Yeah.
and then launch.
All right.
And I'm going to be moving cameras and shutting off recording. Numberless beings, I vow to serve them. Inexhaustible delusions, I vow to end them. Boundless dharmas, I vow to practice them. Unsurpassable Buddha way, I vow to embody it. Numberless beings, I vow to serve them. Inexhaustible delusions, I vow to end them. Boundless dharmas, I vow to practice them. Unsurpassable Buddha way, I vow to embody it. Third time, right? Numberless beings, I vow to serve them. Inexhaustible delusions, I vow to end them. Boundless dharma,
unsurpassable, away. I vow to embody it.
And exit bell, talk about Hashiki. That's a great end. Does a dog have Buddha nature?
Thank you, Anzu, very much.
I'll get Pearson to work it.